Hey everyone, welcome back. Thanks for joining us. Today we've got a brand new story to share with you. So let's begin. Ethan's life seemed picture perfect. His wife, Laura, was charming, successful, and attentive, or so he thought. But over the past few months, subtle changes began to creep into their routine. She started coming home late, claiming her job had gotten more demanding. Her phone, once casually left on the counter, was now always clutched in her hand or locked away. One day, while sorting through their bills, Ethan noticed something odd. Frequent charges at a luxury lingerie store. At first, he rationalized it. Maybe she wanted to surprise him. But a nagging feeling wouldn't let him rest. That night, as Laura showered, her phone buzzed on the nightstand. He glanced over and saw a text preview. "Can't wait to see you at the hotel tomorrow. Wear the red set. I'll bring the champagne." Ethan's heart stopped. Who was this message from? Why the secrecy? He didn't confront her, not yet. He needed more. Determined to find the truth, Ethan played it cool around Laura the next morning, hiding his growing suspicion. After she left for work, he logged into their shared bank account and began combing through transactions. The lingerie store wasn't the only red flag. There were charges to a high-end boutique, a jewelry store, and most suspiciously, a five-star hotel downtown. Ethan's stomach churned. He couldn't jump to conclusions without proof, but everything pointed to betrayal. That evening, while Laura worked late, he drove to the hotel, parked in a shadowy corner, and waited. Hours passed. Finally, he saw her walk out of the hotel lobby, laughing arm in arm with a man in a sharp suit. The man handed her a small box, and she leaned in to kiss his cheek. Ethan clenched his fists. Was he imagining things? Or was this his worst nightmare unfolding in front of him? Ethan knew he needed to confront her, but he wanted to be calculated, not impulsive. The next day, he scrolled through Laura's calendar and saw a suspicious entry. Meeting, 7 p.m., the Grand Lux Hotel. That evening, Ethan arrived at the hotel early. He disguised himself as a hotel staff member, borrowing a housekeeping uniform and grabbing a room service cart to blend in. His heart pounded as he pushed the cart to the room Laura had reserved. Through the door, he heard muffled laughter and clinking glasses. He debated whether to burst in right then, but no, he needed undeniable proof. He placed a small recorder under the room service tray, slid the cart in front of the door, and retreated to the hallway. From his phone, he listened in on their conversation. The man complimented her, called her beautiful, and spoke about their escape plan. Ethan's world crumbled, but he stayed quiet. He needed to make the perfect move. The following day, Laura left for another work meeting, claiming she'd be late again. Ethan followed her to a luxury boutique, watching from his car as she tried on outfits. She exited the store with a large bag, and Ethan trailed her to the hotel again. This time, he booked the room next to hers and waited for the right moment. Through the thin walls, Ethan could hear laughter, flirtatious comments, and eventually, silence. He couldn't take it anymore. Grabbing his phone and a camera, he banged on their door. Laura opened it, her face draining of color when she saw him standing there. Inside, the man looked stunned, halfway through buttoning his shirt. Ethan stepped into the room, placed the camera on the table, and hit record. "Congratulations," Ethan said coldly, his voice steady despite the fire raging inside him. "You've officially destroyed our marriage. Smile for the camera. You'll want to remember this moment," Laura stammered. "Ethan, please, let me explain." Ethan laughed bitterly. "Explain. Explain how you lied to me, how you snuck around with him." He pointed at the man who looked like he wanted to disappear. "You disgust me," Ethan spat. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box, the same gift he'd seen the man hand her days earlier. Inside was a bracelet engraved with the words, "To my love. Always." Ethan slammed the box on the bed. "Is this what love looks like to you, Laura?" She couldn't answer. Tears filled her eyes, but Ethan felt no sympathy. He turned to the man and said, "I hope she's worth it, because now she's all yours." Before leaving, Ethan tossed a copy of the hotel receipt on the bed. "Consider this the receipt for your betrayal," he said, before walking out the door. The weeks after Ethan left Laura were some of the hardest of his life. The house they had once shared, filled with laughter and memories, now felt like a graveyard for broken promises. Every corner reminded him of the life they'd built and the betrayal that shattered it. He moved into a modest apartment on the outskirts of town, far from the hotel and the places that held too many painful memories. His friends rallied around him, encouraging him to keep busy, but their pity only made him feel worse. Nights were the hardest. Alone in the silence, Ethan often replayed the confrontation in his mind. Could he have done something differently? Was there a moment when he could have saved their marriage? But as the days passed, Ethan realized something. He wasn't responsible for Laura's choices. She had made those decisions, not him. Slowly, that thought became a mantra, helping him shake off the guilt and anger that had weighed him down. Ethan decided to focus on himself, something he hadn't done in years. He joined a gym not just to get stronger physically, but to rebuild his confidence. He took up photography, a hobby he'd abandoned when life got too busy. Through the lens of his camera, he began to see the world in a new light. The vibrant colors of a sunrise, the intricate details of a flower, the quiet beauty of a city street at dusk. One weekend, Ethan signed up for a local photography workshop at the lake. There, he met Grace, a woman with a radiant smile and an infectious laugh. She wasn't trying to impress anyone. Her messy hair and smudged camera lens spoke of someone who lived unapologetically. At first, Ethan was guarded. He didn't think he was ready for anything more than casual conversation. But Grace had a way of breaking down walls without even trying. They spent hours discussing photography, sharing stories about their lives, and laughing over awkward moments. When Grace accidentally dropped her camera into the lake, Ethan helped her fish it out, and they both ended up soaked and laughing uncontrollably. Over the next few months, Grace became a constant in Ethan's life. She didn't push him to open up, but she created a space where he felt safe doing so. Years had passed since Ethan's life had been torn apart and rebuilt. He and Grace were now happily married, sharing a life built on laughter, trust, and quiet moments of intimacy. But life, as it tends to do, has a way of bringing unresolved stories back to the surface. One evening, as Ethan was sorting through old boxes in their attic, he came across something unexpected, a leather-bound journal. He hadn't touched it in years. It was Laura's, the one thing she'd left behind during the chaos of their divorce. At the time, he'd made a conscious choice to leave it untouched, not wanting to revisit any of it. But curiosity got the better of him now. He opened it carefully, flipping through the pages under the dim attic light. The early entries were innocent, filled with mundane details of their life together. Vacations, work, little things she loved about him. But soon the tone shifted. Her handwriting grew jagged, tremulous. One entry stopped him cold. "Ethan deserves better than me. I'm broken, and I've ruined everything. I wish I could go back and stop myself from destroying what we had. But it's too late now. He'll leave me, and maybe he should, but I'll never stop loving him." Ethan's chest tightened, the air in the attic suddenly feeling too thick to breathe. He realized she had never uttered these words aloud. Not when he was sitting in front of her, pleading for answers, for closure. No, Laura had always kept her guilt hidden beneath layers of pride. This journal was the only place she could reveal it. He closed the journal, feeling a strange mixture of anger, sadness, and something else. Sympathy? Had she truly regretted it all? Had she ever truly felt the weight of her actions? Or was this just another of her manipulations? Ethan shook the thoughts away. He had a life now. He had Grace. But for the first time, a question lingered in the back of his mind. Had Laura's life ever turned out the way she wanted? A week later, as Ethan and Grace wandered through a farmer's market, a familiar figure caught his eye. A woman standing at a flower stall. Ethan froze. It was Laura. She was different. So much quieter, simpler than the woman he once knew. Gone was the sharp, polished appearance of the woman who had torn his world apart. Now, she stood there, holding a bouquet of daisies, looking almost fragile. Ethan felt his heart race, a whirlwind of conflicting emotions. He hadn't thought of her in so long. Not like this. His first instinct was to turn away, to pretend he hadn't seen her. But some invisible pull, kept him rooted to the spot. He took a step forward. "Laura?" She looked up and their eyes met. She didn't look surprised, but the softness in her eyes made Ethan's heart ache in a way he hadn't anticipated. "Ethan," she said quietly. There was so much between them, so much unsaid, so much history. They stood there for a long moment, the noise of the market fading away, the weight of their past pressing down on them. Eventually, they stepped away from the crowd to a quiet corner of the market. Small talk followed, clumsy at first, then more genuine as they spoke of where life had taken them. "I left the city shortly after the divorce," Laura admitted. "I started over, moved to a small town, a new life, new people. I wanted to disappear." Ethan nodded. "I get it." Laura looked down at the daisies in her hands, her voice barely a whisper. "I just wanted to do something that mattered. Something that could redeem me, you know?" "I'm glad you found that," Ethan replied, though part of him wondered if it had truly worked. She looked up at him, a faint smile tugging at the corners of her lips. "And you? Are you happy?" Ethan's smile was slow but certain. I'm married now. Her name's Grace. She's everything I needed." For a moment, there was a flicker in Laura's eyes. Pain? Regret? But it was gone as quickly as it came. She nodded, a soft, almost imperceptible smile curving her lips. "I'm happy for you, Ethan. I really am." Before they parted ways, Ethan reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, worn photo, one from their past. A memory of them laughing on a beach, carefree, before everything fell apart. He hesitated only for a moment before handing it to her. "I don't need this anymore," Ethan said quietly. "But maybe you do. To remind yourself that you weren't always lost." Laura took the photo, her eyes brimming with tears as she held it against her chest. "Thank you, Ethan, for everything." With that, they parted ways. Ethan felt no anger, no regret. Only a strange sense of closure, as if some unseen weight had been lifted. He walked back to Grace, who was waiting by the fruit stand, her smile pulling him back into the present. That night, as they sat on their porch under the stars, Ethan turned to Grace, his thoughts swirling. "Do you think people can change?" he asked, his voice thoughtful. Grace looked up at him, surprised by the question. "I think they can, if they really want to." "Why?" Ethan smiled, faint but genuine. "No reason. Just thinking about how lucky I am to have found you." Grace leaned her head on his shoulder, her voice soft but filled with certainty. "And I'm lucky you let me in." As the night deepened, the stars twinkling overhead, Ethan realized something profound. Life wasn't about erasing the past. It was about embracing it. Its lessons, its pain, its growth. It was about learning to let go, to forgive, and to move forward. Laura had been a part of his story, but Grace was his future. And in that moment, as the cool night air wrapped around them, Ethan felt something he hadn't in years. Peace. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more stories like this. See you next time.